Just going to do the okay, so we're just doing the other half of the recording. So I really apologize. I was on and that was it. It all disappeared, but thanks to Johnny, I am back. Okay, so let's just see if we could figure out a couple more ideas of this sentence, right, that we were talking about. Hashem sifosai tiftach ufi agi tehila secha. Okay, so we're still on that idea. And I am just looking for it. Okay, great. Thank you, everybody else, for coming back on. It was just a bleep. I just was taken off, and then Barb's son, Johnny, has got us back together. So Baruch Hashem. Okay, so let me see where else. We're still on this idea of why we have to ask Hashem to open our mouths. And so we want to understand it. So here's just a very beautiful idea. So it says Hashem sifasai, which is the word for mouth. No, lips. Okay, sifasai is the word for lips. It's also the word for like a sandbank or a river bank. It's also the word in Hebrew for that, right? Which is like sifas hana'ar, okay, which is the sandbank of the na'ar, of the river. So it's just an interesting idea, a very beautiful idea, really. The Jewish people, you know, when they say like we'll be as much as the sand, so they're talking about the sand of the sea. They're talking about the sand on a beach. So the sand on a beach is a very important barrier. It's a very important piece of real estate, because if you think about it, the waves of the water, actually the waves, you should know, are compared to the wicked people, compared to Rishoim, that they want to come and they want to crash, and they keep coming in at you and coming in at you and coming in at you. And if there wasn't the sand at the sea, right, at that sandbank, to control the waves, like it would be like Chas v'Shalom when there was that tsunami, you know, when the waves like just took over. So the Jewish people are considered the barrier that stops the Rishaim from taking over the entire world. It's an interesting idea. That's how powerful we are. And I know, like, I'm always so fascinated. I don't know if any of you like to walk on the beach. Like, you know, when you walk on the beach and the tide changes, you know, and sometimes like the tide covers up all of the sand, right? Like, you know, there's high tide and low tide, and then later it's low tide, and you see what? The sand is always still there. It almost looks like the sand was completely destroyed or gone. You know, sometimes you can even see it almost in the middle of an ocean. Has anybody ever seen that? Like in the middle of an ocean, where at certain times you see a lot of sand, and then later it's all covered up by this water, and you think for sure that just it's gone, it'll never come back, and you see it comes back. So we're that barrier. So when you say Hashem sifasai, like you kind of remember that idea, like we're a barrier. We're either a barrier for, you know, when negativity comes, then we want to stop it. And sometimes we want like a barrier that we might have, like, you know, like sometimes the Yetzer Hara is your barrier, right? And he's blocking you from really being able to daven properly and really being able to like soar with your soul. You're still kind of in body mind, you know, like, oh, I got to do this. I got to do this. I hope I can finish the Shemona Esrei fast enough because I can get out of here. Do you know what I mean? Like you're kind of stuck like this. So when you're using this word sifasai, it's like to remember the banks of the river. Either you want to be like, Hashem, let me be a barrier to negativity that's trying to take over the world. Let my tefillah stop it. Let my tefillah be like the banks of the river and stop this giant flow of evil. And that's what's going on right now. That's trying to take over this world. Like, let my prayer stop it. Let my prayer be that barrier. Or you're saying, you know what, Hashem, if I have the wrong barrier, I'm like holding back between you and me and my emunah in you, right? Like sometimes I find it very scary to daven for geula, geula, geula. You know, like when everybody starts talking, oh, Mashiach's coming, Mashiach's coming. I sometimes find it very scary to start thinking that way, because if he doesn't come, there's such a great disappointment, you know, right? Because so, how many times have they told us this? You know, like we keep hearing this, so it can get very disappointing. Sometimes you just got to be able to say to, I don't care. Let me like go for it. Let me just have my emunah. I don't care. I don't have to think about if he does or he doesn't. All I have to think about, it's my job to try to help him to come. That's all. So let me like take away any ambition, like, barriers or things that are stopping me from being able to really open up to you and really like daven with my full heart. That's another idea, okay, when you're thinking about the sifasai. So I thought this was so beautiful. So I just want to see, so I'm going to end with this idea, and then we're going to say Shir Hamalas. And this to me is one of the most beautiful ideas of all. If you take a look, you ask yourself, where did that sentence come from? Hashem sifasai tiftachu fi agiti hilasecha. It comes in Tehillim in Psalm 51. Okay, and it's written by David HaMelech. So we have to appreciate something about David HaMelech is he did not have an easy life. Probably had one of the hardest lives of anyone that we know. And we say that the 5 books of Tehillim that he wrote are the 5 books of emotional angst. He went through every kind of tragedy that a person could go through. Okay, so we need to appreciate that when he was born, until he was 28 years old, he was really rejected by his family. Okay, so there was, maybe next week when we have more time, I'm going to go into the story because it's a hard story to understand. But his mother and him were considered like, he was considered like illegitimate. They had a hard, like the father had separated from the mom. So he didn't understand how she was able to be pregnant. And I will explain to you next week how the whole thing happened. And so he was always questioned about who is this kid and whose father of the kid is this. It was Yishai. It was the original only person she was married to. And I'll explain the story to you next week. But what happens, because there was this little question of his legitimacy, he wasn't even allowed to eat with the family. He was always like kind of separated, like they really didn't want to have too much to do with him. And they asked that David HaMelech should be a shepherd. They made him be a shepherd because when you're a shepherd, you're far away, nobody sees you, and there's likely that you will fall into accidents, right? When you're a shepherd, like bears and animals are coming to try to attack the sheep, and he was going to be the lone shepherd. Do you see what I'm saying? So it was like a very subtle way of kind of putting him, and it says that when Shmuel the Navi came to that, Hashem told him, in this family of Yishai, there's many beautiful, great sons, and one of them is going to be king. So he went to the family and he's like, okay, one of you have been chosen to be the king. So of course he's thinking, oh, it's the first one. He was a good, handsome looking guy, big Talmud Chacham and all this. And Hashem keeps going, no, not him. He had 7 sons. Not him. Then the whole family's like, I don't know what you're talking about. Like, if it's not one of these guys, who could it be? So then Shmuel says to the father, to Yishai, he says, do you have one other son? And he goes, David? Like, you can believe it. Okay. They bring David, and guess what? He became David HaMelech. Do you know what I mean? But he had a lot of tragedy in his life. So Tehillim 51 is where the story of Bathsheba happens, which is also a very hard story. But I'll explain more next week, but I will put it like this, that in Tehillim 51, it's like, he's very embarrassed because he really thought that marrying Bathsheba was 100% the right thing to do. And she got pregnant and she loses that baby. Okay. So now, like, anyone who was saying negative things about David are all going, see, told you so, told you he wasn't supposed to do that. You know what I mean? Like, it was a very embarrassing moment in his life. And he is talking to Hashem and he says, Hashem, I have a lot of disappointment and I have a lot of heartache and I could have a lot of anger. But in reality, I'm not going to cut my nose to spite my face. I know that you're the only one who really, really, really loves me, and everything that's happening has a purpose. So help me open my mouth so that I can come close to you and say what I really want to say, not all the anger and all the things I'm really hurt by. So that's a beautiful idea, because I'm sure many times we come to Shemona Esrei and life hasn't been that easy. Right? And there's a part of us that really just wants to go, and it's not that Hashem doesn't allow you. He does allow you to vent to him because he loves you. You can vent to him. But down deep, it's not that you really want to vent. down deep, it's that you want, please Hashem, let me understand this so that I can really tell you how much I love you. So that, I think, is such a beautiful idea. So we'll continue next week. There's so much to learn. And whoever came, thank you for coming a second time. Okay, so now what I think we should do is, I think we have to have tefillah. Okay, we're talking about tefillah. We got to open our hearts and we have to daven no matter what. So everyone, if you want, you could unmute and you could say the Tehillim with me.
Can I just question for?
Yeah, sure. Let me just stop. I'm going to stop recording for a minute.